This episode of Basics with Babish is brought to you by Bright Cellars, a monthly wine club that matches you with fine wine you'll love and delivers it right to your door. Bright Cellars is offering you 50% off your first 6-bottle box, so follow the link in the video description to take the taste palette quiz and get started. All this wine is going to come in handy because today we're making pan sauces. Let's get down to basics. Alright, so let's begin by going over our tools of the pan sauce trade. First up, the shallot, an aromatic vegetable that looks, smells, and tastes like the love child of onions and garlic. A welcome never mind, I guess. Oft growing in separate cloves like a head of garlic, but layered and distinctly oniony like an onion, we're going to simply peel and finely mince our shallot in preparation for virtually any pan sauce recipe. This is going to bring a lot of savory flavor to the sauce, which is generally balanced out by an acid. Enter our old friend, the lemon. After giving it an entirely unnecessary spin, we're going to plop it down on the tabletop and roll it with the heel of our hand, which is going to make it much easier to juice down the line. Next up, many pan sauces incorporate fresh herbs. Parsley goes with damn near anything, but you can try experimenting with things like tarragon, chives, rosemary, and sage. Next up in our pan sauce pantheon is garlic. You know what garlic looks like, you know what it tastes like, you know that it goes well with meat, and meat is what we're here to eat. Oh, I caught it in my finger. That was quite a feat. Next up, some high quality, preferably homemade, chicken or beef stock. If you can't get homemade, here is your secret weapon. 1 packet of unflavored gelatin sprinkled over top and allowed to hydrate. This is going to give your pan sauce the unctuous mouthfeel that you thought was only achievable in a restaurant. Sprinkle it over top and set it aside for 10 minutes before using in your recipe. Another most valuable pan sauce player comes to us courtesy of today's sponsor, Bright Cellars. First off, do not cook with wine that you wouldn't drink. Second off, stick to dry, crisp white wines like Sauvignon Blanc, and dry, full-bodied reds like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Pinot Noir. Lastly, we're finishing the vast majority of pan sauces with copious amounts of butter. High quality, unsalted, and fresh out of the refrigerator cold butter. Lastly, in order to make a pan sauce, we need a pan. More specifically, a heavy-bottomed stainless steel skillet. Something that we can get very hot, something that the food is going to stick to and leave little bits of residue, aka fond, and something we can really scrape at without worrying about hurting it. So there are your pan sauce necessities. Now how about we stop talking about it and make one happen? Let's start with my very favorite iteration, chicken. We're starting with a whole chicken for 2 reasons. First off, so we can harvest its delicious backbone. This, along with the wings, are perfect for making a quick chicken stock when you're in a pinch. Second, so we have complete control over the way our chicken breasts are prepared. I want them prepared airline style, that is, skin on, bone still attached underneath the breast meat, and the drumette still attached, as a sort of little dark meat snack. These guys are ideally suited for pan-roasted preparation, as you shall see. First, we are lubing up our stainless steel skillet with a little bit of vegetable oil and dropping in the chicken breast skin side down into a cold pan, which at first sounds super counterintuitive, but placing the skillet over medium-high flame is going to heat up the skin more gradually, which is going to render out more fat and encourage the skin to stick to the bottom of the pan, which is going to cause it to brown more evenly. Now you might be saying to yourself, chicken sticking to my stainless steel pan? That sounds like the recurring nightmare that I've had every night for the past 32 years. Well, you'll be delighted to find that once the Maillard reaction is complete and the skin is deeply browned, it will lift effortlessly off the bottom of the pan. And once we flip the chicken, it's going to be resting on its rib cage, which is going to prevent the delicate breast meat from being in direct contact with the ripping hot pan. So as these guys head into a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven to finish, they're effectively sitting on their own little built-in roasting racks, emerging from the oven juicy on the inside, crispy on the outside. Now before slicing and serving, these guys need to rest 10 minutes, just enough time to turn this beautiful fond into an ethereal pan sauce. We're placing the pan back over medium heat, draining off any excess fat and dumping in about a half a cup of shallots, which we're going to saute in about 2 tablespoons of reserved chicken fat until they are soft and fragrant and beginning to turn translucent around the edges. Then we're going to crush in 1 clove of garlic, continuing to saute for about 30 seconds until nice and fragrant, and then it's time to deglaze, or use a liquid, in this case a dry, crisp white wine, to lift up all the fond or savory flavor crystals off the bottom of the pot. We're also going to add an equal part, about a cup of our gelatin-enhanced chicken stock, and get to scraping. We want to get all those flavorful bits up off the bottom of the pot, and then we're letting this guy come up to a simmer and holding him there for anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. Toward the end, I'm going to add a few healthy squeezes of our table-rolled lemon, crank this guy over medium-high heat, and reduce aggressively until it's thick enough that a spoon or whisk scraped across the bottom of the pot leaves a trail. Like this, that means you're ready to kill the heat and finish the sauce. Let it cool down for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to mount it with butter. Remember that your butter should be cold from the fridge. This is going to help it emulsify as you whisk it. Then, in addition to kosher salt and freshly ground pepper, I'm going to finish this sauce with a handful of parsley. If your sauce breaks, in other words, if it becomes oily and greasy and separated, you can add a splash of water and it will come back together. But otherwise, just keep whisking until your sauce is thick and glossy and ready for its close-up. Then you can either leave your chicken whole and serve it in a pool of sauce, or you can debone it and slice it up, plate it up all pretty, and smother it. Maybe finish that off with some fresh parsley and some flaky finishing salt. And here you have a chicken dish that truly takes things to the next level. It is deeply savory from all the pan drippings and the aromatics. It is bright and flavorful and lively from the wine and the lemon. It is rich and unctuous and mouth-coating from the gelatin and the butter. In fact, all the pan sauces I made today are so good, you're going to notice that each dish ends with me leaving the room with a bite on a fork so I can show off to my girlfriend. Now, the procedure for making a pan sauce for steak is very much the same with a few key differences. First, as you can see, we're dropping the steak into a very hot pan. The faster that you establish the crust on a steak, the better. You can cook your steak however you like or however is appropriate. I have a shell steak of medium thickness, so I'm going to flip and butter baste it with some herbs and garlic. Once I've got a beautiful brown crust on both sides of my steak and it has reached the doneness of my choosing, I'm going to extract it out onto a plate, blanket it in that beautiful sizzling brown butter, and head back over to the stovetop. Let's just take a second to stare at this though. Yeah. That's nice. Then the procedure on the stovetop is very much the same. We're sweating our shallot, adding our garlic, deglazing with gelatinized chicken or beef stock, and this time instead of a dry, crisp white wine, we've got a full-bodied red, a Columbia Valley red blend from Jetbird. We are then likewise aggressively reducing this mixture over medium-high heat until it reaches a thick, almost syrupy consistency. Then once again, we are going to mount with an irresponsible quantity of butter, whisking it constantly until it disappears into the sauce, leaving behind only a creamy emulsion. Make sure, as always, to season to taste with kosher salt and freshly ground pepper. Try a tiny little spoonful to make sure that it is worthy of our steak. Speaking of which, our steak has rested for 10 minutes and is ready to be carved. No, I didn't overcook the steak. I wanted it medium. Ugh, I can't even joke about that. Luckily, the perfect remedy for a slightly overcooked steak is a delicious pan sauce. One that's so rich and flavorful and complex that you don't care that you overcooked the last steak that you have in the house, and you still bring it into the other room so Jess can try a bite. Lastly but not leastly, let's talk pork chops. We got some thick center-cut bone-in pork chops. And to prevent the dreaded curling chop, we're going to place some shallow cuts through the fat and down into the sinew that runs around the outside of the loin. This is going to prevent the sinew from contracting and prevent our pork chop cutlets from turning into pork chop bowls. Into our stainless steel skillet goes some vegetable oil, heated over medium-high flame until little wisps of smoke dance off of its surface. Then we're going to gently lower the pork chops down into the oil away from you so as to not splatter hot oil all over your tender human body. And then we're treating these kind of like a steak, just letting them sit until a deep golden brown crust forms, giving them a flip once they lift easily off the bottom of the pan. And as in most pork cases, I like to go for about 135 degrees Fahrenheit at the thickest part of the chop. Out onto a warm plate they go, and there they shall rest for 10 minutes while we build our sauce. First, I'm going to dump out all but about 2 tablespoons of the remaining fat in the pan, add a few handfuls of our old trusty friend, the shallot, saute until soft and fragrant, deglazing this time with a healthy half cup of bourbon. Very carefully, preferably off heat unless you want a fireball in your hands. A cup of our gelatinized chicken stock, and then it's the same deal. Scrape, swiftly simmer, season, scrape again, silence the flame. This is getting hard to do with words that start with S. We're going to add maybe a quarter cup of heavy cream to this mixture, whisk until completely combined, and then as always we're going to mount with butter. Pan sauces, you see, are not healthy things, they are delicious things. And then the only thing this sauce is really missing is an acid, in this case taking the form of a heaping tablespoon of Dijon mustard. You could also add a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice. Just taste it, see if it's sweet enough, sour enough, savory enough. Wow, hey S words, where were you guys earlier? Give give it a taste to make sure that it's, I don't know, give it another taste, maybe another taste. Oh, God, that's good. Be sure to save some for the pork. This time I'm going to pool a whole bunch of our sauce on our intended serving plate, top with our chop, and dig in. Maybe with a little sprinkling of parsley for color and herbaceousness. And just like with the chicken breast, this is kind of the apex form that pork can take. It is rich, it is unctuous, it's flavorful, it's peppery, it's bright and herby and savory, and I'm kind of running out of descriptors for it. It's amazing. It's definitely getting the most fork shakes of the bunch. Now there's only one thing left to do: cut off an extra thick, juicy piece, drench it in sauce, and carry it into the other room where my favorite taste tester awaits. And all of these sauces and the dishes they accompany are made even better with great wine. But what if you don't have access to or aren't even sure you're getting great wine? Enter stage left, today's sponsor, Bright Cellars, a service that selects wine just for you from all around the world and delivers it right to your door. The service is only for adults 21 and older. The folks at Bright Cellars take pride in educating their club members, so each box comes with a wine education card for each bottle that outlines tasting notes, suggested pairings, ideal serving temperature, and origin. Once you get your first box, you can go online and rate the wines you've received, so that your next box will be even more tailored to your preferences. One of my favorites that I've received recently was this Double Century Shiraz. It's an Australian full-bodied red that goes really nicely with the steak and red wine pan sauce. And great wine, like great pan sauces, deserve to be shared with your significant other in the other room. So I'm gonna pour Jess a glass of this stuff, and I will see you guys later. Oop, gonna need that so it looks like I know what I'm talking about. Bright Cellars is offering you guys 50% off your first 6-bottle box, so be sure to follow the link in the video description below to take the taste palette quiz and get started.